Now, welcome back everyone into this coding session of functions. Now we are going to go through functions one by one with the complete coding section. So let's start with this block. As you can see right now on your screen, what we have is a function notebook environment. These are some of the notes that I have just scrapped out for you guys, so you can give it a read, pause the video and give it a read if you want a quite theoretical aspect of functions. But we are going to jump into the definition part, that is, function is a block of code which is only runs when it is called. So you have a block of code, you are assigning some data into it, in some code into it, and if you want to use that, you just have to call it out. So give it a read. If just by pausing out the video, it will be much more informative for you guys, so you can just see why do we use function, and then we are jumping into defining a function. So let's wait for you guys. If you want to pause it out, you can just pause and give it a read. Now, so let's jump into with our coding sections. So let's start with syntax part. Okay, so we have def function name. Okay. Function name, let's write it function name, and inside of it I have parameters, and then colon, and after that I have some statements. So what exactly is this? So in this above two lines of code, we have a lot of points to discuss about. So first of all, keyword def that marks the start of function header. So it will just start out and tell our interpreter, that is the Python interpreter, that we are starting to write a function right now. So take this block of code or this particular block or this indentation over here as a function. Now a function name is uniquely identify the function. Okay, so whatever name you have given out, okay, over here, that will uniquely identify your function, and whenever you need it, you have to call it out. Function naming follows the same rules of writing identifiers in Python. If you could just recall, when we were learning about data types and we learned about numbers, we looked into how to name your variables, right? What are variables and how to name out your variables and your identifiers. Okay, so the same rules and regulations are followed out by function name. Parameters or arguments. Okay, we'll just discuss about in a while that what is a parameter and what is an argument. Again, both are quite the same thing. If you call parameter and argument in the same phase, it is completely fine. Okay, so parameter and arguments through which we pass value to a function. So whatever you write over here, this value will be passed into the function. Now, these are optional. You don't always have to mention parameters over here. You can just write out whatever value you want, or you can just keep them blank. It's upon you. A colon to mark the end of the function header. So over here, you can see that we have a colon. This colon just marks that this is the end of the function header. Def starts that this is the starting of the function header, and colon states that it is the end of function header. Now, again, an optional documentation that we discussed in a last video, that is docstring. Let's write it off. Over here, you can just write docstring. Oops. Docstring. Okay. This is again optional. This is an optional documentation string, that is again docstring format, to describe what a function does. So over here, you will just write off that whatever the description of function you want to add. So you can just write off just in here. One or more valid Python statements that make up the function body. Statements must have the same indentation level. Okay. Usually we have 4 spaces over here. Okay. As you can see, this is known as the indentation. One, we were discussing about this when we were learning about conditional statements. So these are 4 spaces, or you can just write out a tab. Okay. So both works quite fine. So these are the statements where you write out your code. These follows the same indentation for spaces, usually for this one. Okay. An optional return statement to return a value from the function. Now, there's also one more thing. If you want to return any value from this function, you can just use return and whatever value you want to return back. This is again optional. Okay, so that's why I haven't written over here. So make sure you are well versed with all the 7 points that I have told you right now about def, function name, parameters, colon, docstring, statements, and again the return function. Return is again optional, parameters are optional, docstring is optional. The main things are def, function name, colon, statements. So let's look into a quick example of function. So taking out our uh, the same example which we discussed into our presentation round, that is add. Right now I'm not writing any parameters into this, and inside of this what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out a code. Let's say num1 equals to input. Let's take int input, take or give a number, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to print num1 plus num1. So let's run it out. Now what exactly I'm doing in this function, I'm writing this block of code. In this block of code I am just taking a user input. Let's copy this code first of all, rather using this in a function. Okay, or let's do this above over here. So 45, so it will just return me 90 because that is the addition of it by itself. Now converting all of these into a function, add it over here and return something like this. So let's execute it out. So it has been successfully executed. Now let's say I want to add. Again, just call out the function name, that is add, and run it out. So let's say 45 and it should just return me back add. So why and where it is useful is, let's say I have a very big bunch of lines of code. So I have print, hey, then I have something else, input block, then I have for, if, again for, again if. So I'm just giving you a sample, and inside of this, if this is the block of code that you want to add out. So this is a block of code where you want to add this out. So rather than writing this complete block, what you can do is, let's copy it out, copy, paste it over here, and delete this up and just call the function call. That's it. If you run it out, that block of code, whatever in this function is there, whatever the code is present over there, that will come over there and will be executed. Now moving into one more, let's take one more example, add, rerun it again. Let's take 10, it will return 20. Every time you call the function, it will be running out the same value. So let's take 100, 200. Now let's look into some more examples over here. We have already looked into quite a few examples and discussed very much brief into the usage of function. Let's look into a very simple, okay, def greet. Okay, and over here right now I'm not writing any parameters into this. After a while we are going to jump with parameters and all of that, but right now we are not going to write any parameters or any return function over here. So over here again I'm going to take an input from the user, that is name. So let's take input, enter the name. Let's write one more, print, again a f string. That is, my love for f string is never ending. So if you love f string, just use f string or use a format or any other, whichever you feel is easier for you guys. For me, f string is my first love, so I'm going to use a lot and a lot of f string. No, print welcome, oops, name. That's it, we don't need any more. Now if I write greet or call out greet, again the format for calling out, I'm just writing the function name with parenthesis. Okay, let's call it out. Let's write Paul. So welcome Paul. Every time you write greet and take anything out, let's say uh, Rohit, so it will just call me out the same thing, greet. So it will, every time you run this code again and again, it will just give out quite the same thing. Okay, whatever the block of code, you are just calling out the block of code to be used. You are just telling the interpreter that I need this particular block of code, so you have to give me this. Okay. Let's look into a quick last example of this, and then in our next video we are going to start with parameter, arguments, and return functions. So def, let's take add colon, make sure to give a colon, and then I'm just going to copy this code over here right now, which I am having for num1, paste it out over here. Let's check the indentation is fine. 4 gaps. Same thing, I'm going to copy this block, paste it out for num2, give a number, give a number 2, give a number 1, increase the readability a bit with some colons and spaces. That's it. Now let's write the f string sum of num1 bracket close and num2 is equal to this, and then with a ending string. Now let's call add. Let's give it a number 4 and a number 5, and we will be getting something like this. The sum of 4 and 5 is equal to 8. Okay, so just a minute, I have to change this. Num2, okay, 4, 5, sum of 4 and 5 is equal to 9. That is how we can create a function Python. So in our next video we are going to look through function return and function parameters and arguments. So congratulations everybody, this was again a very deep concept of functions. Let's jump into our next video.